Hello, everyone. I'm here today to share something that is very dear to my heart, and I assume to all of yours too. We're all here in Paris. We're clearly all very passionate about Web3 for a reason. I think a lot of us see so much potential in this space, so much that we've shifted our careers and lives to be a part of this. And we all want to see that potential realized. But there seems to be a general understanding that if we build better technology, we will get there. Our conversations, especially at conferences like these, seem to revolve around that. And I'm afraid that that couldn't be further from the truth. If we think Web3 is about tech, we're not going to make it. Better technology alone will not get us to where we want to go, and I'm here to share what will. I'll start by just sharing who I am and what is ChainSafe, just in what helps with the context of this presentation. So my name's Amer. I'm VP of Product and Project Management at ChainSafe. Let's just say I hit my personal rock bottom 5 years ago and did a complete career change to Web3. It was merely a dream to attend something like EthCC at that time, and I really could have never imagined giving a talk. So I'm very grateful to be here and for all of you to be listening. A bit about ChainSafe. We are a Web3 research and development firm that's partnered with major blockchain ecosystems to help drive Web3 forward however we can. We work with ecosystems like Ethereum, Filecoin, Polkadot, and Mina very closely. And I joined as the first PM 3.5 years ago, and we've now grown to about 120 people all over the world with a loving culture that we're all very lucky to be a part of. ChainSafe is also a collective of people with strong values. In fact, it was by becoming part of the ChainSafe community that I truly understood Web3. And I'm here today to share a vision and values that has inspired me to dedicate my life to a purpose that is worth fighting for, one that the ChainSafe community helped instill in me. Unfortunately, I believe this narrative, the values and vision that inspired the Web3 movement is getting lost in the hype. And there's a lot of hype. I've seen firsthand how the growth of this space, just seeing these events, how hard it is to even get a ticket. And I've seen so many friends start working in this space. But I'm not sure that everyone entering the space today really gets it. And as I'll explain, considering the point we are at in history, this is a very dangerous thing. And my hope is that we can inspire each other as believers, builders, and leaders in Web3 to help steward this vision and values forward for the betterment of society. So let's first set the context and make sure we're all on the same page. What are we even talking about? What is Web3? And we'll do this quickly because I'm sure most of you know, but Web 1 was the original iteration of the internet, which was read-only, where you could go and look things up online and it would be the same for everyone. Web 2 is the web that we're more used to now. Read and write, interactive, application-based, things like Wikipedia that you can actually update, or social media like Facebook and Instagram that can show a different feed to each person that goes. And this is really most of the world today. And so what is Web 3? Web 3 has applications that are not only read and write, but also verify and own. Verifiable applications, so you know exactly what's happening, and you know exactly what will happen, and ownership of assets. And so an example to just illustrate this, we can talk about gaming. There's gaming in Web 2 and gaming in Web 3. But the difference is in Web 2 gaming, if they say there's a limited edition item, and they say there's only 10 of an item, you just have to take their word for it. You can't really know for sure if there's only 10 of them. And also in Web 2, if that game just disappears, or one day you log on and the item's gone, there's not really much you can do about it. But in Web 3, you know you own that item, and no matter what happens, you can take it with you, you can even take it to another game, you can sell it. It really is yours. And so this is the new paradigm that we're building towards. And one other thing I'd like to talk about in terms of defining exactly what Web3 is talk about Web3 versus blockchains, because a lot of us interchange those two terms. And so the way I see it, blockchains are a fundamental element of Web3, but Web3 encompasses everything that facilitates applications that are read, write, verify, and own. There's a lot of adjacent or alternative technologies that facilitate these new paradigms that are not just blockchains. So we can for example, talk about oracles that help us verify data that are off-chain, or cryptographic primitives like zero-knowledge proofs that help us verify things, or blockchain alternatives like hash graphs or DAGs, directed acyclic graphs. These are all things that I would classify as part of the Web3 space, but may not be blockchains. So just so we know what we're talking about and we can be inclusive of all these technologies and people working in the space. But who cares? My parents definitely don't. I've tried really hard, but they still don't. Same with 90% of my friends. People might think it's cool or innovative, but they're not compelled to change what they do on a daily basis, even slightly, because of it. And in my opinion, no amount of speed, scalability, or UX is going to change that. Build it and they will come simply is not true. But we all care for some reason. Many of us have traveled across the world to be here. But can we actually explain why we care? In order to understand why anyone should care, I think we need to ask ourselves the following question. And I think Kevin posted this just like a week ago. Why are we here? What is the purpose of Web3? And I think we all need to be able to answer this question really well in order for us to be able to convince anyone else to care. And so, in my opinion, if we think Web3 is about technology, we're ngmi. We're not going to make it. It took me 5 years of immersing myself in Web3 to see that technology is the least important aspect of this movement. Unfortunately, most people are focused on the price and the technology. What will the price of Bitcoin be in a year? How many transactions per second? We're missing the forest for the trees. This isn't about technology or making money. This is a revolution, but it's not a technological one. This is more like the American Revolution or the abolishment of slavery than it is like AI, self-driving cars, or the internet. This is not about technology that can make our lives easier. This is about values. This is about a massive societal shift. This is about a beautiful vision for the future of humanity. And I would say that this is a cultural revolution. A perfect example of the cultural revolution is the shift that's occurred within me over the past 5 years. 5 years ago, I was working at a bank and I got laid off. Today, after embarking on a career change, I'm helping lead a blockchain R&D firm. 5 years ago, I thought about buying Bitcoin and Ethereum to try and make some money. Today, I believe we should all shift our assets to these systems, and it has nothing to do with making money. 5 years ago, I could care less about decentralization, privacy, or censorship resistance. Today, not only have I changed what applications I use, but I've become annoyingly vocal about the importance of these values for society. 5 years ago, I acknowledged that the world was far from perfect, but I wasn't too concerned about it. Today, I'm gravely concerned with how our society and power is shifting, and I'm deeply afraid of the dystopian world that is being built in front of my eyes. 5 years ago, I didn't have long hair. Now I do. And 5 years ago, I didn't have a vision for how to improve the world or values for how to structure society. Today, I'm so passionate and vocal about our vision for the future that I've dedicated my life to seeing it through. This is what matters. It's not the technology. It's the shift in people's minds, heart, and soul. The shift was not only eye-opening for me, but the vision has completely changed my life. It's lit a fire inside of me. I'm so motivated to continue contributing to this movement to drive it forward. This technology, Web3, is merely a medium. It's a medium for a narrative that is a catalyst for monumental change. By understanding why Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, we can see the issues with the current system more clearly. Like a bulletproof vest implies that it's possible to get shot, Web3 reveals the issues that we currently face in society. By understanding how our systems are currently hurting us, we can build a vision for the future where we are liberated from them. Like the American Revolution, driven by a compelling vision for a society where everyone should have a voice, Web3 is a revolution with a beautiful vision for society. So what is this vision of this cultural revolution? Web3 and blockchain mean so many things to so many different people. Sound money, censorship resistance, decentralization, ownership, new forms of governance. What is the common thread that ties all of these together? For me, It's about systems and the values that are embedded in them. Our interactions with and our interface to society, and ultimately one another, are through a series of man-made systems. Money, economy, technology, financial systems, government. Over time, these systems have evolved in such a way that it significantly disadvantages the majority of people and ultimately causes a lot of suffering. In other words, I think there exists a privileged minority that benefits more from these systems. And I don't think most people would argue with that. I would go as far as to say, though, that in many cases, our fundamental human rights and freedoms are being compromised, and we don't have to look very far to see that. Look at Edward Snowden. He risked his life and sacrificed his freedom to show us that we're being spied on. This is risking free speech and thought, which ultimately risks democracy. More recently, the Canadian government froze bank accounts of people who were peacefully protesting against vaccine mandates. There was no violence, and the government enacted martial law with an emergency act meant for catastrophic events. This allowed them to freeze anyone's account without due process, even people who just donated and weren't even part of the protest themselves. To be clear, with your funds frozen, you can't work, you can't pay rent, you can't even buy food. You simply can't live. This is in clear violation of our basic rights and freedoms as a human being. And this happened in Canada, of all places. And so I think the worst part is really that we're so dependent on these systems that we can't opt out easily. It's very hard to work without technology. It's very hard to move countries. It's impossible to live without using fiat currency. And this has put us all in a precarious situation. The way I see it is that the essence of Web3 is to use advancements in technology to create alternatives to these systems that preserve our human rights and empower individuals. Or more simply put, Web3 is a movement to protect human rights and empower individuals. Many would say, though, that we're living in the best time that's ever existed for humanity. And others would say, well, things are not so bad for me. And so why is this so important right now? The issue is that we're not in such a stable point in society. We can acknowledge that things are always changing. But thanks to technology, things are changing faster than ever, and the pace of change continues to accelerate. We are evolving into a world with AI, self-driving cars, blockchains, CBDCs, and who knows what else. We've all heard the famous phrase, software is eating the world. As technology continues to become the dominant and driving force in society, it will play a bigger and bigger role in shaping our actions, our relationships, our lives, our thoughts, everything. And so the scary question then becomes, who owns these systems? Who controls these systems? And what are the values embedded in these systems? The answers to these questions will determine all of our lives and the lives of every human to come. These questions are being answered as we speak. And this is why Web3 matters right now. And so the question is, what are Web3's answers to these questions? In Web3, we own our systems. You and I, each and every one of us. And in Web3, our values are to empower people. More specifically, empowering people through these values. There's open source, trustlessness, privacy, shared ownership, and opt-in. And to be honest, like, these aren't explicitly written down anywhere, but simply a collection of values that have been instilled in me a lot through being a part of the ChainSafe community and through my own research and understanding. But let's go through them one by one. Open source. Firstly, we have the right to know exactly how these systems operate, just like we have the right to know what ingredients are in the food that we consume. We also have the right to change it if we don't like it. And with open source, we value collaboration and sharing freely for the benefit of humanity. Trustlessness. In Web3, we truly honor the individual by empowering them over institutions and traditional hierarchical power structures. And we've traditionally had to put our trust in these. And so this is a big departure from where we were. For many of us living in first world countries with governments and institutions that are generally pretty good, perhaps this doesn't seem like a big deal. But if you are systemically disadvantaged or live in a country ripe with corruption, this is a life-changing property. Just talk to anyone suffering from hyperinflation in Venezuela or Lebanon. And in Web3, we believe that we should have agency over our data and our relationships, as these are essential to human empowerment and dignity. Privacy. We believe that privacy is essential to protecting free speech, thought, and ultimately all of our fundamental human rights. As Edward Snowden showed us, this is of ultimate importance. And in Web3, we believe in minimizing surveillance and manipulation of our behavior. We should decide when and how to share our data. Shared ownership. We believe that everyone deserves the benefits of ownership, like capturing the value we all help create. So if you think of social media, like Facebook or Instagram, if you think of a marketplace, like Uber, or if you think of even a game, like a massive multi-online RPG, these things would have no value without their users. There's no value to social media if no one else is on there. There's no value to a marketplace if no one else is using it. However, all of the value is basically captured by the creators. And so in Web3, we believe that everyone deserves the benefits of ownership, including capturing financial value that we all help create. Also, in light of shared ownership, we believe in having a voice to effectively shape the systems we depend on. So if you think of YouTube or Instagram, many people make their lives on these platforms. However, they have no say in the algorithms, and those algorithms can change overnight on them. And in Web3, we believe that we should all have a voice. And finally, Optin. I think this is almost like a property, like if you have all the other values, you have this one too. However, I think it's very important to explicitly state it. And so in Web3, we get to choose what systems to be a part of rather than having them forced upon us. We don't have a choice right now with fiat money or the economic systems that massively impact our life. And right now we can see in many places they're really having a negative impact, but we don't have a choice. But in Web3, we get to choose. And in Web3, we are never locked in. So we always have the choice to choose and create the systems that are most suitable for us. Take social media today. Many of us can see it's harmful. I think most of us have probably seen Social Dilemma, the documentary. But we can't just take our data and relationships and go elsewhere, even though we know it's harmful to us. But in Web3, we would be able to do that. And so, what does this mean for the world? What would it mean if we embed these values in Web3 systems? What exactly is our vision for the world as a result of these values? And I think it's very important to have this vision because that's what will inspire us to actually embed these values in our systems. Because we can build a Web3 without these values. None of the things that I just listed have to be part of any system. You could lock your users in even in a Web3 system. It's a choice and a value not to. And so we need to always remind ourselves why we're doing this so that we can always stay true to those values. And so I think there's three things that happen if we stick to those values. One is protecting our rights and freedoms. Two, reducing suffering at scale. And three, reaching new heights as a society. And I'll go through these one by one. So firstly, protecting our rights and freedoms. Just as we saw with Edward Snowden and the Canadian government's authoritarian response to a peaceful protest, we must protect ourselves before it's too late. Central bank digital currencies are on their way, and CBDCs will give institutions one-click access to freeze or debit our accounts on a whim. Or more bluntly put, institutions will have the most powerful tool ever created to manipulate our behavior at scale. And that change can happen overnight. So just like we lock the front door to our house to give ourselves peace of mind even when no one's going to break in, Web3 gives us the tools to protect our basic human rights and freedoms. Web3 gives us peace of mind over our lives. A quote that I really like from Polkadot founder Gavin Wood in a blog post he wrote about why we need Web3, he says, "Consider Web3 to be an executable Magna Carta, the foundation of freedom of the individual against the arbitrary authority of the despot." And I couldn't agree more. This is basically our Charter of Rights and Freedoms programmed into our technology. And we live, the final thing is reducing suffering at scale. We live in a world ripe with massive inequality, both within societies and between societies. In both cases, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing at an increasing rate. It's not just that it feels wrong. Data shows that inequality is seriously harming us. A man named Richard Wilkinson spent decades researching this phenomenon, and the results are clear. It's like a cancer, invisible at first, but slowly the signs start appearing until it's eventually impossible to ignore. These signs are that life expectancy, mental illness, addictions, infant mortality rates, teenage birth rates, literacy rates, and many more indicators are significantly worse than our levels of inequality. The statistics are shocking. There's absolutely no question that we all suffer more in societies that are toxically unequal. Our existing systems, including Web 2, have systematically exacerbated extreme inequality. But by building systems with the values of Web 3, systems that are open source, trustless, opt-in, people will always be empowered to choose what's best for them. And as a result, inequality will definitely be reduced, and ultimately, we'll all be better off. And so, I think that I have that twice. And so the question then becomes, what can we all do to help realize the potential of Web 3? As inspiring of a vision as this may be, there is absolutely no guarantee that we will win this battle. And it is a battle that's being fought. We must not ignore that. There's a lot of work to be done, and we need to do our part. Let me remind you that I went from working at a bank and not caring about any of these values to dedicating my life to seeing the Web3 vision through. While the technology is fascinating, the mindset and cultural shift is truly revolutionary. I am now extremely vocal about these values, and as I said before, as technology becomes the dominant force in the world, it will determine our actions, our thoughts, our relationships, and ultimately every aspect of our lives. Web3 is about embedding values in our technology to preserve our human rights and empower individuals to have agency over their lives. But, as I mentioned before, the hard work in Web3 isn't building technology, although that is quite hard. It's instilling the vision and values in everyone's heart. We have so many new people joining the industry right now for various reasons. We have investors joining DeFi. We have artists and creators joining in NFTs, and that's incredible. It's so nice to see more people getting passionate about this space. They've all fallen in love with something, but I'm afraid that the core narrative hasn't been shared. It can't just be about cool technology and making money, because when the going gets tough in a multi-year bear market, when companies become insolvent, when there's pressure from institutions and it feels like it's David versus Goliath, it's this narrative that will keep us going, a values and vision that's worth fighting for. We all play a part in making this happen, and so we must live and breathe these values. Each and every one of us, please dive deeper into these ideas and share them widely, because that's how we reach our potential. Share the vision and values with friends and family, especially newcomers to the space. Choose to focus our conversations on that. Dive into the content that's inspiring and reiterates our values and vision. And I've shared a bunch of resources that inspired this talk on that QR code, and share them widely. Let's be as welcoming as possible in Web3 and use your unique position to help push this forward. If you're a writer, please share these stories. If you're a filmmaker, we need Web3's version of the social dilemma. If you're a builder, build with these values in mind. If you're a leader, ensure that the people you hire understand the values and vision. The technology works and continues to get better every day, but let's remember that it's the cultural shift that will drive us forward. By inspiring more people with our compelling vision, the Web3 vision will inevitably become a reality. Thank you. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but.
Hey, Amer. Great talk. Thanks very much. I'm really glad that this talk happened here, and I agree fully with all of the values that you put out. I have a question, though. Are you sure that if we generate an environment where everyone gets the choice to choose what's best for them, that automatically leads to less unequal society?
That's a good question. I think, like, there's probably a lot of assumptions there to assume that that would help, but I definitely know that the current systems and the lack of people to have that choice and agency is worsening the inequality. So the assumption is removing it will make it better. And I don't think inequality in itself is bad, but it's when it gets to these extreme situations that it becomes very harmful for society. So the assumption is if people have choice and they can choose what's best for them, then they won't choose systems and situations that are ultimately not serving them. Or they'll be empowered to create new ones that do. So, it is a good question. I don't know for sure. I don't think any of us can, but I do think it will help.
Thank you. I think we are running out of time. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.